No, you can't record. I don't think you can record it, just the host. But will have it recorded and put on our YouTube channel, and we can send out the link in the follow-up. Now we have 150. Sharon, people still waiting outside?
We're still getting a few more people, but I'll just keep letting them in as we go along.
All right. Yeah. So we're at 11:05, so we better start because I think it will be a very comprehensive and informative talks. And so welcome everybody to our AutismBC Talk. Today we are going to talk about navigating CLBC funding and understanding the services. And we're very grateful to have two speakers from CLBC. Cam Judge, the Manager, Policy and Government Relations of CLBC, and Alexis Green, Senior Policy Analyst, Policy and Government Relations, CLBC. And both of them have over like 10, 20 years of experience in the field and very informative and very resourceful. And in today's topic, we're going to cover understanding CLBC services. Just some correction, our apologies of the acronym that we send out. This is inaccurate. Today, we're going to cover understanding CLBC services, including Personalized Support Initiative, PSI, and Community Inclusion, CI. And also, we will talk about the allocation of funding, the Guide to Support Allocation, GSA, and priority tools, and funding options, like including agency funding, individualized funding, and microboard arrangements. And also we'll cover some funding amounts, not exact amount, but what can you expect in community inclusion, respite, and housing. And we will also cover the accountability, like who is overseeing all these services to deliver. And at the end of the session, we'll address all the concern, like who to talk to if you have question and problem. And after that, after the 30 minutes PowerPoint presentation by Cam and Alexis, we will go through some of the questions from the floor and also some of the questions from our team in AutismBC. So we're very grateful to have Cam and Alexis here, and I will hand over the platform to Alexis.
Thank you, Lindy. Thank you so much for having us here. So as Lindy said, the idea here is sort of this slide here speaks to some of the things that we hope you take away from this presentation. So we're going to give you a little some background on who CLBC is, what some of the eligibility criteria is for our services, who will you be working with at CLBC, so specific staff roles to key staff roles, and how do we allocate our funding, as well as looking at some of the ways that CLBC pays for services. So not just contracted agencies, but there are other options. There are other payment options, and then also what are the types of supports and services that are available that your family member may be eligible for, and as well as and something that I'm going to reiterate, well, Cam and I will reiterate throughout the presentation, is the welcome workshop series that we host as part of our welcoming process. And this presentation will give you a good overview of CLBC, but the welcome workshop series, which you can attend, will give you more detailed information about all these specific these areas that we're going to be going over. Can someone help me with move to the next slide? Okay. Sorry, slide is not moving.
The slideshow?
Yeah, it's not moving.
Sharon, can you help with that?
I'm just trying to see if I can get control of that. Okay. If you hit your arrow buttons, it won't go to next.
No.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Maybe you can stop sharing and reshare.
Okay, I'll stop.
Yeah.
Hold on, sorry. Stop sharing. Do you want me to share again?
Yes.
Okay.
I think people join in just
Okay.
might have trigger.
Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Yeah.
So CLBC is a
Are you
Oh.
sharing? I don't see
no,
it
I'm not.
on our screen.
Okay.
No.
Sorry about this.
Not a problem.
Can't share it.
Share screen on the bottom.
Can you see it now?
Yes. So you can hit, yeah, full screen.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
So CLBC is a Crown corporation that we work with individuals, families, service providers, community and government partners. CLBC is an example of a Crown corporation is like ICBC or Hydro BC, and we receive funding from the provincial government. The funding is specifically to support individuals' disability-related needs. We were established in 2005 under the Community Living Authority Act, and CLBC originated from a grassroots movement led by families and self-advocates who wanted a funded organization to focus on their needs. And we fund supports and services through 3,500 providers, and these service providers or agencies, as we'll refer to them, have been and continue to be established through qualification and accreditation requirements. So many of these agencies belong to professional groups like Inclusion BC and the BC CEO network. So in order to deliver CLBC services, they must meet a range of qualifications, skills, and experiences. So, for example, all agency staff must complete criminal record checks. And our goal as an organization is to ensure that people can live as independently and inclusively in their community.
Hey, hi, I'm Cam. So who we serve. So CLBC has two streams of eligibility. One stream is for people diagnosed with a developmental disability that started before they turned 18. The DSM-5 you see on the screen stands for Diagnostic Statistical Manual, Volume 5, which is the manual psychologists use to make diagnoses. People who are eligible for CLBC services meet the criteria for developmental disability in the DSM-5. Our other eligibility stream is for people who have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder or fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, and who have a real and significant challenge with doing day-to-day activities. People can apply to see if they are eligible for CLBC funded services as early as the age 16 and can start to plan with us for services at age 17. CLBC has staff called eligibility facilitators that help people with applying for eligibility. They can talk to you about the process and what documentation you will need to provide. CLBC also partners with the Ministry of Children and Family Development, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Health to help people eligible for our services plan to transition from children and youth services to adult services. If youth and their families are receiving services from the Ministry of Children and Family Development, they are asked to work with staff at that ministry to support applying for eligibility for CLBC services. Next slide.
So what happens when you're eligible? What is next? Again, I mentioned earlier that we have CLBC has a welcome to CLBC process, and so you would register for and attend a welcome workshop to learn more about planning for services. And these welcome workshops are available online, so virtually, or in person, and they're usually group events. That's where you would go and learn a lot of the nitty gritty of CLBC and what are the next steps for you. You would want to call your local office to speak with a facilitator about planning for services. Specifically, a key document that you would be asked to work on is a personal summary, which would be an opportunity to share your child's goals, strengths, and support needs. And this is a key document because when you go to apply for specific services, this is a document that when you go to you would be sharing that with the service provider agency that you are working with, because then in that document you will have quite a bit of information about the individual, about the person. So once you're deemed eligible, you speak to your facilitator from your local office. You would be assigned a facilitator, and if you couldn't, for example, attend the group welcome workshops, you could organize the facilitator could organize a one-on-one session with you to go through what the processes are, what to expect, so to learn more about also how to make requests, but also what are some of the available community supports.
CLBC staff roles. So you'll hear two really critical staff roles as you undergo planning. So facilitators and quality service analysts are known as analysts. So the role of the facilitator is to provide support and clear understanding of what is needed, to answer questions, ensure individuals have the forms, and provide any help needed to complete and submit them. Part of our job is to help connect people to resources in their community, as well as to connect people to funded services through CLBC and other government organizations like services through the Ministry of Health. We have two teams of facilitators, regional and local. Regional facilitators focus on eligibility, adult guardianship, and community education. They also provide the letter to the individual indicating confirmation of eligibility or the criteria if it is not met for eligibility, and more assessments or information which may be needed. And there's quality service analysts, and they're usually the primary contact for contracted service providers. They have a monitoring responsibility, primarily to ensure agencies meet the contractual obligations and services are delivered, such as quality of life outcomes, the standards, and the service requirements. They may also review the request for service list and the planning registry to contribute to the budget decisions as funding becomes available. So they'll collaborate closely with facilitators. They also manage all other contract management tasks, such as procurement and contracting.
So this slide, we're going to talk a little bit about how CLBC makes funding decisions. And so one of the things that CLBC does when we start planning with people is to assess their level of developmental disability related needs, which is, we use a tool called the Guide to Support Allocation, which is often referred to as the GSA. So I'm going to go back and forth using that term, so I apologize, it's second nature. So resource allocation occurs when an individual, family, or support network initially seeks CLBC funded services. And again, whenever there's a change in an individual's needs or circumstances. So this process, this assessment process may happen more than once throughout an individual's life, because there's an understanding that an individual's needs change throughout life. but essentially CLBC initiates resource allocation by gathering information about the services that individuals currently receiving and about their current disability related needs in 10 areas of daily life. So for example, they look at support, they review support needs for areas of communication, meeting personal care needs, creating or maintaining relationships, making day-to-day decisions, complex health needs, and also making important life decisions. So this is and learning about these different 10 key areas of a person's life is done through conversations with the individual and their family and or support network during the Welcome to CLBC process. It's also we review the individual's personal summary and any other information the individual or family chooses to share about themselves. So that's why the personal summary, as I mentioned before, is a really key document, because it's a place where you can really highlight the individual's strengths, their needs, their goals, which can then inform the guide support allocation process. Where they also review available assessment documentation and review any existing planning documents that's shared by the person or through their family. So part of this process is we try to match the disability related needs to the services that we have listed in the supports funded by Community Living BC document. So that is the document that is available on our website, which lists all the services and supports that we offer and descriptions of it. And as funds become available and within our financial capacity or our ability, we make CLBC makes funding decisions based on a number of factors. And again, this information is all available, highlighted on our website. So for example, looking at the individual's urgency of need compared to others requesting the service, whether the individual is already receiving any CLBC funded services. There's also priority groups such as children in care who are turning 19, youth transitioning to adult services, and individuals living with aging parents. So so you go through this process of the guide to support allocation, and then individuals may want to request services. And so the request, there's when you go to request a service, it's put on a request for service list, and there isn't what often people ask is there a wait list? There isn't a wait list. There is a list of requests that are noted based on the time they were initiated. So it's maintained in the request for service list is maintained in order of priority based on urgency of need, and it's determined based on the request for service priority tool, which uses a specific criteria to sort of prioritize the request. So for example, we look at the urgency of requests, the appropriate match of the support for each individual, as well as also the available funding that comes in that year. So yeah, so the tool, essentially the request or service priority tool, is used to assess the urgency of an individual's request for funded supports. So I would recommend that all this information is on our website, but also there is one welcome workshop series, which I will session that we'll refer to later in the presentation, that goes into detail about this process.
So funding options for services. So we have services through agencies, individualized funding, host agency, direct funding, and person-centered society microboard. So, oops, sorry, just messed up here a second. As I mentioned earlier, CLBC funds the majority of our services through qualified service providers. We also provide people who apply and qualify with what we call individualized funding, or IF. IF can be used to hire staff directly to provide supports. It can also be used flexibly under our individual and family wellness policy to purchase things like classes at the recreation center, counseling, culturally appropriate services, or to hire some staff so family members can take some time away from each other. Some people also receive funding to deliver services through a person-centered society or microboard. These societies are registered under the BC Societies Act, and they function like a service provider, except they are usually only focused on providing services to one person.
So what type of supports and services does CLBC provide? And again, all this information that I have here is in a document that I referred to in one of my previous slides about the list of CLBC services, and there's three major areas of support to participate in your community, support for you and your family's well-being, and as well as supports to live in your home. So there's an array of supports that we provide. So employment, it would be to help you find a job and keep a job. Community inclusion activities to support inclusion and involvement in community. Learning, it would be time limited support to learn new things and develop your skills, confidence, and independence to live the life that you want. And again, communication is to help people participate in their community in a meaningful way. We also have supports for you in your family's well-being. So one of them is the individual and family wellness, which previously was referred to as respite. And I'm assuming you're probably most familiar with the term respite. We recently changed that language as part of our efforts to be more accessible, and so it might be a newish term, but it's individual and family wellness is equivalent to what respite is. So the idea behind it is that it gives individuals and families funding to organize or pay for services or support to help them make daily life more comfortable, healthy, and happy. So, for example, counseling could be used funding you could use to pay for that, or a session, a course for the individual in community. We also offer funding for behavioral support. So we contract with a qualified professional to support a person who's communicating using unsafe or concerning behavior. Homemaker services is available for people who require basic housekeeping services or personal care. Some families also access homemaker support if they provide ongoing unpaid support in their family member's home. Support coordination. So we will work with you to help coordinate services and supports, both funded and not funded by CLBC. So this may involve resource referrals, training, scheduling advocacy, or connecting people with their peers. Then we also offer psychological support. So we're available. CLBC will work with a licensed psychologist or other qualified professional on your behalf. Services in the area include consultation, assessment, and intervention, and it could be provided over a set time period based on the individual's needs. And then we also provide supports to live in your home. So if someone is living independently, but they own their lease or rent place, but they need some support to live in their home, so it would come to that support would be provided in their home, but the individual would be living on their own. Probably our most requested home support is shared living, specifically home sharing, where in this option the individual shares a home with someone who's contracted to provide you with ongoing support at home. So it would be a shared living or home sharing provider. And then there's also live-in support. So if the individual owns or rents their own home, you have someone who comes in and shares your home with you. There's also staff living, which is for individuals who may have many support needs that require a bit of support with many areas of daily living. So in this option, you would live in a home usually run by an organization where support is received by a team of staff who rotate through the home.
Okay. What is core and enhanced funding? So this is an umbrella term for standard CLBC funding for people who have requested but are not yet receiving CLBC services. Employment and post-secondary inclusive education is excluded. So CLBC tries to give everyone who is eligible access to funded services and supports consistently and fairly. However, at times requests for funded services may exceed available funding, or it may take some time for an individual to receive funded supports from CLBC. CLBC provides core funding to provide individuals and families with some support if we cannot fulfill their request right away. So this slide goes into detail around the difference between core and enhanced. So with core funding, you can receive up to $350 a month. So an individual without services is guaranteed access to a minimum of $4,200 a year. Most people, when they first start to receive CLBC funded services, receive what we call core or enhanced individual and family support funding. This is standard funding we provide to people who are not receiving any other CLBC funded services. This funding helps people access some service while CLBC works to find resources to fund their requests for other CLBC funded services, like supports in their home or community. The amount of core or enhanced support funding CLBC provides is based on how significant a person's developmental disability-related need is.
So, as I've mentioned a few times, the part of CLBC's welcome and process to CLBC, the key part of it is these welcome workshops, and they, as I've mentioned before, they are individuals who are people who are eligible or people who are not yet eligible can participate in these Welcome to CLBC workshop series, they are available. They'll be hosted in person, but also virtually online. And if someone is eligible, and for example, they can attend one of the workshop series, they can always connect with their facilitator and request a one-on-one session. On the slide where I was talking about, where we were talking about resource allocation and how CLBC funds, how we make funding decisions, the Welcome Workshop Series number 4, The Real Deal, which is where you would go into learning more about how we work, how the decisions are made about who gets services, and again, it also explains the different kinds of services CLBC funds. But it again, so it's a sort of each welcome workshop builds on the other. So the first one is about getting started, so introduction to CLBC and opportunities and resources in adult life, how all the pieces fit together, including the CLBC piece, because the CLBC piece is one part of it. It presents information, resources, and choices about what's next, including the 3 additional welcome workshops, what those 3 other welcome workshops will cover. I mean, this is not a mandatory process, but it's very, very helpful, and it will some of the questions that the overview of this presentation will speak to some of the nitty-gritty of what you want to know will be in these sessions. So the next one is the community connections, collect and share information about local community, because it's not just about funded services, it's also about what unfunded and generic supports, what's in your community that your family member would be interested in, would help support them. So learning about doing community mapping and learning a bit more about what's available within community. The third section is planning choices. It covers many of the ways individuals and families can plan, who can help plan, as well as the planning help that is available. It also explains information about what to do if people want to request services. And again, section number 4 is the real deal, so specifically about how CLBC makes funding decisions. And this is also an opportunity to meet other family members if you're doing it in a group session as well. Have been quite well received, and they take place. A lot of the school boards actually we're partnering with the school districts, and they'll host CLBC will host workshop series there to assist the transnational youth and families to apply for eligibility by age 16. So the sessions are held in community. So yeah. That is our presentation today, but we're open for questions now.
Thank you, Cam. Thank you, Alexis. Our team in AutismBC came up with a list of questions that is frequently asked. So we might take this time to go over them so that we can give more information when people making inquiries. So the first thing, I think you've already addressed that, is there a wait list for services even if eligibility and GSA is confirmed? So it goes through the priority tool, like after the GSA. But Cam mentioned there is a core enhancing funding. You mentioned the 350, which used to be called respite, which is specifically used for respite. But now they expanded to a well-being fund so that you can use it for psychology, for psychologists, counseling, homemaking. But I saw there is an enhanced funding of $700. Can you briefly talk about, like, from 350 to 700, how can we access the different types of funds, or like different pool of funds?
So it would depend on so there's core and enhanced, and the core is, and it's based, so in the resource allocation process, there are different levels of disability related need, and sort of that enhanced amount, that 750, is for individuals who have significant disability related needs based on the GSA, the Guide to Support Allocation process. So whereas the 350 would be based on it's based on your disability rating. So the greater your need is, the more you would be eligible for the enhanced, versus the core would be, so it's the amount that you receive is based on your disability or need according to the resource allocation process. So it's based on what your needs are, based on the criteria, that sort of those 10 areas of daily living.
Okay.
So it's based on your need.
Okay, so 300 is like standard, 350 is standard. So, and the max will be 700.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I have a question about moving from district to district. So if we're, like, say I'm in Fraser Health Unit and I'm moving to the island, do I need to reapply, or are these services transferable?
So there are, as you'll see, if you go on our website, we have a map. There's the province of BC for our services are divided into 11 quality service areas, and our commitment for if someone was moving from one quality service area to another, we in our transfer policy, we ask that families give us a minimum 90 days notice of their move if they're moving from one quality service area to another, to help plan that move, to help ensure that the individual can access similar service, because depending on what community they're in, there may not be the same services there. But the earlier you start to plan with us, the easier it will be to have your services transferred to that community. What I'll say though is that we we are responsible for CLBC Service funded services. We are, if someone is receiving services through health, they would need to connect with their health counterpart to help coordinate that. So we can't. Our responsibility would be, we would support the individual in having those conversations, but we have no control over whether that health funding or there would be transferred. So the recommendation would be is to, as soon as you know that you have the person is moving, is to connect with their facilitator and determine whether or not this is actually considered a transfer. It may be that they're moving within the same quality service area and they're not moving to another part. So the biggest takeaway would be to connect with your facilitator, and if it is a move from one quality service area to another, then our commitment is to ensure that the individual, the person, can access services in their new community. And I just want to say that I know that I've been using the term individual, and the reason I use individual is because individual is someone according to our eligibility policy, is someone who's 19 and over, who is deemed eligible. So I apologize if that's confusing, but that's why I'm using the term individual. But I'll try and use person.
Thank you. Alexis, do you mind stop sharing your screen so that we can see your face better?
Oh, okay.
Because we're seeing a blank screen right now. There you go. Yeah, thank you. So another question we have from the team is, so you mentioned residential services, because we are quite confused about PWD and CLBC funding. So when we are offered residential services from CLBC, will it take away the PWD funding from the individual, like from the 1,500 or something check right now?
So we have a specific policy on this that will help outline the details of it. But essentially, what would happen is the portion of there would be a shelter component part that the person would be responsible for paying, and that would be used towards their home support. But their whole PWD amount wouldn't be taken. It would just be their living or home support contribution would be used towards paying that amount.
Okay, but if it is like a home sharing, then they would take away the food money and just leave the pocket money for the individual.
So they would,
right?
I think so. Yeah. So the pocket money they would keep. But again, let me. As we've mentioned, Lindy, that we'll be sending out more detailed responses to those questions, and I will put that information in there. Just I don't want to, be misguided, but
okay. Yeah, because we're sometimes parents like us are quite confused. Like PWD seems to be separate from CLBC, but it belongs to the same ministry, so we don't really know how the funding's juggled. Right. Thank you. And we have quite a few questions from our chat box, and then I will pass it over to Sharon, our regional coordinator up north, who is managing the chat box, and she will ask specific questions from the chat box. Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks, Lindy, and thank you everyone to putting your questions in the chat area. We do have quite a lot in there. Some are a little bit more specific to your individual needs, and we likely won't get time to go to that today to address those individual need questions. We will be sending an email with a follow-up to questions that were not answered today. So we'll do our best to go through and get to everyone's question. So there were a few people that were mentioning just connecting with their CLBC facilitator and just building a relationship with them and feeling like they're being heard. And is there any choice in the person that you get to work with as a CLBC facilitator?
Interesting question. I don't. I think that would be. I don't want to say no, but I know that when someone is deemed eligible, they are assigned a facilitator, and at that point, I mean, and the idea is that part of the welcoming process is to build relationships with their facilitator. And I mean, if there is a concern, I would recommend raising it right away. But the intention is the facilitator is there to support the individual and the family and the support network. So I would say that try and go into it with an open mind, and that it's they're there to support you in this journey, essentially. So yeah. Cam, do you have anything, or is that?
Yeah, I think the point is to develop relationships at the onset. That's what we we're here to listen, to hear your loved family member's story, and to guide you through the process. And if there is any concerns, of course, those can be raised at that time. Facilitators and analysts are overseen by a manager, so it could always go to that. But we would hope that you're working through that process with the facilitator. So, like Alexa says, we don't want to say no, but we want to work with you really closely to make sure that everything is flowing smooth for you and your loved one.
And I would also say, and this is like on the far end of it, I mean, it was the question, one of the questions that Lindy, you had sent about sort of the accountability structures that we have in place. And there is a complaints resolution process that we do have that's available to families, and I will include that in the response that I sent to Lindy and Sharon. But there are avenues for you to use internally through if you do have concern. The complaints resolution process. There's also the advocate for there's other avenues if you do have concern. But like Cam said, we're both coming from we both have the same goal, and it's important that we try and come into it with being open and honest, and if there is an issue to raise it.
Thank you. There was a few questions related to the wellness funding on using it for things like personal trainer and understanding how each of the family wellness supports are broken down, and is it percentage per category? And also if there are wait lists for that family wellness funding as well.
So essentially, the idea is that almost all individuals that who are deemed eligible will receive some form of funding, and that funding comes in the core and enhanced funding support. And within that, it can be used for that individual and wellness service category. And the idea behind that is that we recognize that families play a really key role in supporting individuals, and we recognize that we need to help family members build their resiliency and their capacity. And so the idea is that if the policy is very clear about this, that it's intended to so for example, the individual and wellness funding could be used, for example, if there was a drumming course in community, and the individual you could use that to pay for that course, and that at that time the family member could have a break and maybe go and have a coffee with a friend or meet with other family members. So it's intended to give the family member some respite, essentially. The policy outlines very clearly what it can be used for, but essentially the intent is to provide family members with some support. And there isn't a percentage, there's a certain amount that you have, and then you're giving the flexibility to use it as long as it meets the criteria that's outlined in the policy. And that's where your facilitator would be very helpful to connect with if you do have questions, because I understand that it's not always black and white, and can be gray in the gray. So
some other questions related to that was if that funding is in addition to programs and services.
So it could be, so the individual and family, so that could be part of, yes, that could be the sort of part of the array of services that you do receive: individual wellness plus say some community inclusion, and then maybe some kind of home support funding. So it could be part of the funding package that a person might receive.
Thank you for that. Yeah, there's just quite a few other questions in here. I'm just going to comb through and see. There are some more specific ones that, yes, we can try and answer those in the follow-up email, but may not be able to get to them today. A question we had was around, does someone who is able to go to school or work, would they still potentially qualify for CLBC supports and services?
Again, that's a very specific question, and I don't want to say yes or no, but because they would need to meet with a facilitator, go through the guide support, to support allocation process. But I mean, we do have individuals who are supported by us, who do have work. I mean, we support a range of individuals with a range of support needs. So I don't want to say yes or no. It would be to speak. It would be to speak to your facilitator. And then even as with the welcome workshops, you will meet other families members there who may have similar situations, but I don't want to guide you in one way or the other. Yeah, that would be my recommendation.
And for that qualifying piece, what are the assessments that go into the qualification for CLBC, whether it's PSI or the other streams?
I don't know the specifics of them. We can, again, that I can send along some information about that.
Okay.
We have as Cam was mentioning, there are facilitators and there's analysts, and we have eligibility facilitators and then just facilitators. And we have eligibility facilitators who specialize in doing the eligibility process, and they will have that detailed information. We also have that available as well on our website, but that would be something to call your local office and say, these are the assessments I have, what else do I need?
Just to give more information, we did an eligibility talks with Katrina before, like during the pandemic, I guess it's a year ago. So if anybody is interested in the eligibility topics, we can send you the link to that YouTube. Although it's been like 1.5 years, things might change, but the basics are there. So it's still the same test, like psychoeducational test, family doctors written information, but it's the basics are there. I just have one question from the floor. It's still about the core enhancing service money. Is that on top of your program and services? So if you have CI, if you have a day program or individualized funding, do you still get that core enhancing funding?
So, once fund an individual or a person's funding comes through, and they're already receiving the core enhanced funding, for the 350, so the core funding will be rolled into your other funding allocations.
Oh,
so,
okay.
for example, someone who is receiving the enhanced, so it's the larger amount, when they receive their they receive funding for other services, they'll receive the funding of the smaller amount. The core amount will be rolled into the new funding that they receive.
Okay, so it will be combined.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sharon, you have more questions? We still have 5 minutes.
Yeah, there's a few different questions on like behavior support and what that looks like, and if they need to be from the RASP list, which is from, that's for under 6 typically. So yeah, I don't know if you could elaborate a little bit more on what behavior support looks like.
At this point, that's a very specific question. I'd recommend that we connect with other facilitator, but also a welcome workshop.
Right.
Again, I can send information out to give you some basics, but in terms of specifics of it, I'd recommend connecting with your local office.
But for behavior support, is it usually through your agency or your individualized funding rather than the wellness funding?
Well, it would. So generally it would be so through the wellness funding, you can use some of your funding for
behavior consulting
for counseling to top up the counseling amount. But if outside of that, that would be it's generally it would be through an agency that you would be receiving the psychological support. But it's in terms of within the individual and family wellness, it's limited in terms, because the amount that you're going to receive is not going to cover everything, but it would be to top up what you are paying for counseling. And it could be for like culturally appropriate counseling, meeting with an Indigenous healer or so that.
Right. Thank you. Sharon? You're muted.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted myself there. Welcome workshops. Are there dates for this year?
Yes. And again, you would need to connect with your local office, and they could provide you with that information. I'd also connect with your school district, because again, we will have scheduled ones through them as well. So those would be my 2 recommendations: is to speak to your school district, and then also connect with your local office.
I think that's it for questions. I'll pass it over to Lindy.
Sure. Okay. So if you have more questions, just send it our way, like to hello@autismbc.ca, and we'll pass it over to CLBC, Alexis and Cam, to see if they can direct us to the right person to give you answer. And we can't really comment on individual case because it's like case by case, but we do have some generic information that we can share. And this talk will be recorded and on our YouTube, and we can share the link. And I'm sure Alexis will send me the notes afterwards and the PowerPoint for answer those questions. And we're close, like we're at 12 o'clock, so we make it on time. Thank you everybody for joining, and until next time, have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for having us. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So Cam and Alexis, maybe we can stay a bit and I can go through